Welcome to the Orange Hammer Podcast. My name is Corbett Storick. I've been a licensed general contractor for 8+ years, specializing in new construction, renovation, furniture building. I'm the son of an architect and an interior designer, and I've been surrounded in this industry since birth, watching all aspects from concept, design, build, punch list, and of course, all the problems that come up in between. In my time in Durham, North Carolina, I've noticed a significant gap in knowledge between homeowners who need work and the people who do the work. On this podcast, I hope to break down the process of homeownership from the perspective of both the homeowner and the contractor in an effort to help raise the knowledge of homeowners about their homes and the construction/renovation process. I hope you enjoy. If you're enjoying the Orange Hammer Podcast, or if you have a topic that you want covered, or have recently done a project, please contact the Orange Hammer Podcast. The Orange Hammer Podcast is on Instagram and Facebook. Please like and subscribe, share on whatever platform you're enjoying your podcast on. Also, check out our YouTube channel, The Orange Hammer. The Orange Hammer Podcast is proud to be brought to you by CRS Contracting LLC for all your construction and handyman needs, new buildings to renovations, furniture building, EV charger install, or even a TV mounted. You can call me, Corbett Storick. It'd be my pleasure to help you. You can find me on Instagram at CRS Contracting. WSDG, the Walter Storick Design Group, specialists in architectural and acoustical consulting. Check out WSDG.com. And Taylor Bragg, for all your artistic needs in all mediums. You can find her on Instagram at brag_about_art. That's brag, BRGG, with 2 G's. She's the fantastic artist behind the Orange Hammer logo, and she did my fantastic table painting of my podcasting table. The Orange Hammer Podcast is proud to be brought to you by Stacy Sloan with Keller Williams Elite Realty, proudly serving the Durham and Triangle area for 25 years. Call Stacy at 919-972-1180. The Orange Hammer Podcast is proud to be brought to you by Rachel Z with Rachel Z Real Estate Team Realty. From the Triangle to the Triad, call Rachel Z at 919-323-6068. All right, here we are doing another Zoom episode of the Orange Hammer Podcast. Today, my guest is Michael Israel of, is it Zuper?
Zuper, just like super, super duper Zuper.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Super, but with a Z for those who are not looking at the one sheet that I've looked at. For me, I mean, this is beyond incredible. I never thought I'd have a podcast that people reach out to me to come on. And you're now on a very short list of people who have sought me out to share what they have to say. So right. I'm very excited. So I'll just let you jump right in. What is Zuper?
Sure. Zuper is a software firm, and we make software that is specifically for managing and tracking all of the activities that field service technicians, field service engineers do in the field when they're installing equipment, repairing equipment, doing preventive maintenance, moving it around, deinstalling it, whatever activities someone is doing in the field. That is what Zuper keeps track of. We keep track of all the time, the schedule, the parts, the materials, the billable amount, the service contracts, anything and everything having to do with delivering service to someone in the field. Does that summarize it reasonably well?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. So you're selling a software package to people like me, or off the top of my head, an HVAC company would totally need this type of software, because they really are doing every facet of what you described, from servicing equipment to moving equipment to installing new equipment to taking away old equipment and everything in between. So just to automate, for lack of a better term, all of that procedural stuff that would normally take a salaried employee, you can remove that salary cost and I'm assuming your software is cheaper than a person.
Well, I guess it probably depends on how many people are going to be using the software because it's licensed based upon the number of users. But your
Okay.
example of HVAC is a perfect example. In fact, we have many, many heating, ventilating, and air conditioning companies as customers and users of Zuper. But let me broaden the definition just a little bit too. You can think about it as anything that needs to be done in the field by someone who is getting up and leaving their office, so to speak, or leaving their home. And that spans the gamut from all the way from landscaping, people that simply mow your lawn or take care of the landscaping around an office building, all the way up to and including people that work on robotic surgery arms or satellites before they're launched into space, of course, and everything in between. In essence, anything that needs to be installed, periodically repaired, periodically maintained or calibrated, or occasionally moved around or deinstalled. Those are the activities that the Zuper software keeps track of.
Okay. And you mentioned licensing per person. So is that like you have one license per tablet that is in the HVAC van, or one, if there's three guys on that crew, all three of them need a separate license?
Typically, it's going to be each person that's using the system will have a license. But I'm not the salesperson or the sales manager, so those details also can be discussed and negotiated with the individual salespeople. I'm sure that there is, some flexibility in the way that we are able to price things depending upon the needs of the customer and the circumstances that the customer can describe.
Gotcha.
So, but generally speaking, in the software as a service space, which is where Zuper resides, all companies generally license their software based upon the people that are actually using the software.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so for somebody like me, it would be a pretty easy calculation. I run the company myself, and I'm the
Right.
only employee. So one company, one person, one license. But it's a more complicated conversation when, I wake up 10 years from now and I have six vans, and each van has three people in it, and they're doing six jobs at a time.
Right.
I probably don't need a license for each one of those carpenters in the van. I need, a license basically per van, so to speak, because that van as an entity is kind of going and doing stuff, and I need to, track it and see what they're doing and buying and, this, that, and the third. So do you have to sync up a payroll software to this? Do you sync up business credit cards to this software? Take us through kind of how that works.
Sure, I'll give you a kind of a general answer. Let me address your statement about the van first. The software would not be licensed to the van per se. It's going to be licensed to the person that's using their tablet or iPhone or whatever to input data about the work that they're doing. So that's the way the software is generally licensed. Um, and then, I'm sorry, repeat your question again because I lost track of it as I was backtracking there a minute.
Oh no, that's fine. Yeah. It just, yeah, it would make sense that it would be to the person.
Correct.
It was more me thinking like a realistic application for this software would be like, I don't need three people in a van all with their own license on their own tablet. It would be, a duplication of efforts for no reason. Whereas, as the company owner, I could buy, let's go with that example of six vans. I could buy six licenses from you to put them on six tablets that the company owns, that one goes to each van, and that, then the person is almost irrelevant at that point. They just, as long as they're using the software correctly and inputting everything, then, I, as the overseer of, these fake six vans that we're using as an example, can make sure that everything is being, done correctly.
Everything is
Um,
being tracked and entered correctly, right? Yeah.
yeah,
The distinction is, of course, is the van itself cannot enter data. Only a person can. So,
yeah,
yeah.
gotcha.
But I understand your point, and yeah, I agree with you.
And so the question that I asked you was about other business systems
Yeah.
that small business owners are using. I'm curious about how they integrate. For example, if you're buying something that is being tracked by Zuper, you might be putting it on a company credit card. Is the
Correct.
company bank linked to the Zuper software? The miles that you're driving in a company vehicle, whatever tracking system you might be using for that, does that link, or do you do it all inside Zuper? I'm just curious, like when you're trying to get somebody who is a small business who doesn't have your kind of software, for lack of a better term, what is the sales pitch to get somebody to buy this software to make their life easier?
Well, let me address your first question first, and that is you're talking about how do we integrate with other sort of complementary systems. So I'll give you a general statement to start with. We have out of the box already developed, proven, and in use integrations with over 60 other applications, including many of the types of applications that you mentioned. So, for example, we are integrated with financial systems so that we can generate invoices and we can generate estimates and quotes and turn those estimates and quotes into jobs or work orders. We can collect payment via a credit card. The individual technicians have the ability to collect payment when they're in the field. So, and I should back up a step, they also have the ability to generate an invoice. So if I'm a technician and I come to your house to repair your water heater, for example, I can come to your house. In the first step, I can look at your water heater and then I can give you an estimate. It says your water, I have to replace the anode rod and I have to drain the heater and yada yada. And I can give you an estimate, say for $250. I don't know if that's real or not, but just for sake of an example. If you say yes, I can then turn that estimate into a work order, a job to actually do the work. And then once the work is done, I can turn that work order into an invoice that shows the amount of time that I worked and the material that I used to do the repair. So in the example I gave, I put in a new anode rod and maybe I changed out a valve and I drained the heater and water heater and refilled it. All of those details are recorded in the job itself, and then they're also reflected on the invoice. Then I can give you the invoice. I can show it to you on my tablet. I can mostly, in many cases, I can print out a copy if I have a remote printer to give to you. Then I can accept payment from you via a credit card if you like, or I can send you a link to a payment where you can open up your email or your text message and you can open up that link and make the payment online as well. So in the financial instance, and I've kind of oversimplified it, I'm sure we can do soup to nuts, right? We can create the estimate, we can create the job, we can create the invoice, we can collect the payment. And we're integrated with financial systems that keep track of all of that information, right? We are also integrated with all, literally, of the major CRM systems like HubSpot and Zendesk and Zoho and Salesforce. All of those systems that are used for, say, telephone support, keeping track of, when you call in, for example, to have a talk about a problem with your water heater, maybe somebody on the other end of the line is able to talk to you and understand the details of your issue. Maybe they're even able to give you some suggestions on how you might do the repair yourself or do a setting that will fix things correctly. All of that information is being kept track of in what's known as a CRM system, customer relationship management system. And we are integrated with all of those major CRM systems. So to continue with the example that I've just given, if you call in to me and I'm a call center agent, I'm a help desk agent, and I'm trying to walk you through, how do you reset the valve on your water heater, or whatever, or how do you drain it and refill it, or whatever. And I'm keeping track of all of that information as I'm talking to you. And in the end, if we can't get the problem resolved over the phone, then I need to dispatch a plumber, say, or a technician out to your house to actually effect the repair on site. All of the information that I have gathered as a call center agent, when I open that work order in Zuper to send a technician, all of the information I've gathered as a call center agent is there in Zuper for the field service person to see. So they've got all of the history about what's been done so far. And then they add on to that, of course, the work that they do. And then in addition to that, if I've ever serviced your water heater in the past, last year, 2 years ago, 3.5 years ago, all of that history information is available to the technician when the technician comes to your facility as well. So those are just a couple of examples of the kinds of integrations that we have. And there are many, many more that I can talk about if you like. So that's I don't want to take the whole podcast talking about integrations, but it's important for people to understand that we have over 60. They're all in use. They're all tested. They're all tried and true. And obviously, because we have over 60, we have a great deal of expertise in developing integrations should additional integrations be necessary. And they sometimes are.
What's the, I guess, starting level or smallest company that you sell software to?
Oh, I would guess. I mean, I'm not familiar with every one of our customers, but we started out in the small end of the market when we started in Asia or the Indian subcontinent and part of Europe in 2015, 2016. So we have companies that probably have 3 users,
Hmm.
and then we have companies that have hundreds of users. So we really are a software application that can be used by small, mid-size, and larger companies as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. That really does kind of simplify things. I mean, I'm thinking off the top of my head. I mean, a lot of that stuff I'm doing, on a Google Doc or keeping track of by hand in a notebook or,
Yeah.
on a freaking file cabinet that, it's like archaic by comparison. Um, but at the end of the day, still has to be done. And I, don't have at the moment, don't have a Zuper software to take care of it all for me.
Well, I can have a salesperson contact you.
Yeah, I bet you can. Yeah.
Uh, let me just elaborate a little bit on what you were saying. Um, you know, I've been around in field service for a long, long time. You might be able to tell from my gray hair. Um, and as part of the work that I've done in the past, I've been a field service analyst. And as an analyst, we've actually surveyed companies and we've surveyed individual field service technicians, asking them, what do they like about their job and what do they dislike about their job? The number one answer from actual field service people that do the work, number one answer about what they like about their job is they like fixing things, right? The number one answer about what they don't like, they hate paperwork. And so one of the advantages of Zuper is that it eliminates a lot of that paperwork and a lot of that data entry for the technicians. For example, just a real simple example, a technician no longer has to record how many hours they worked or how many hours it took them to drive to their job, because all of that information is captured automatically. To go back to the invoicing example, they don't have to write down their hours and the parts that they used. All of that information is captured automatically. They might have to input some information in their tablet or their iPhone, but the pricing, the extended pricing, the taxing, all of that is calculated automatically. So it saves them a tremendous amount of time in doing administrative work and virtually can eliminate the paperwork that they hate so much.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a lot of paperwork, and
Yep.
I as a one-stop shop, I mean I do more than a one-stop shop can do because I have an incredible Rolodex of subcontractors, but that has its own level of paperwork, 1099s and constant scheduling fighting, if they're busy working for another GC or whatever it may be. And then not to mention everything that goes along with just how you send stuff to customers and generate invoices. I'm a little bit more old school. I've got a an Excel spreadsheet template that I open, and then
Sure.
I have to just type it all out in 10 minutes, and it's working for me. But there's definitely going to be a moment very quickly, I hope, where it's no longer working and I'm going to need a system of some kind. So it's very interesting to learn about this at this point. I know that my let's use an example that I can remember. My electrician, I don't know exactly what system he is using. For all I know, it is Zuper, but his thing is, I mean, it's exactly like what you're talking about. I mean, his invoices come from his system, his bills come from his
Yeah.
system. Quick, click here, takes you to QuickBooks to pay for it. Um, Auto text for scheduling come from his system. And he pays some number a month that I was like, that's way too much money. But he's like, no, it's not for me. It saves me, twice that in having, in this, that, and the third. And so it's you guys are not the only uh I guess SaaS for tradesmen, but it's starting to become more and more of a standard thing for us.
It's becoming table stakes in a way. I mean, especially if you're going to grow in your situation, as you said, if you're a one-man show right now, maybe it's manageable, but if you're going to grow to 3, 5, 10, 12, 20 people over the next many years, that's not scalable. Doing everything manual is just not scalable. And the other side, there's two other things. Not only is it not scalable you can't do that kind of work. You can't do that kind of manual work and be efficient and productive as you need to be. But it also presents some challenges with accuracy. Obviously, anytime you do anything manually, there's a propensity for people to make mistakes. And you don't want to make mistakes in billing your customers, et cetera. And you don't want to miss revenue opportunities. So I think there's not only the incentive to do something to improve the efficiency and productivity of the operation, but also the incentive to make sure that everything you're doing is correct and accurate and thorough.
Yeah, no, very true.
Yeah.
When you sell the software, does it just integrate with whatever smart device you want to use, or do y'all have a like a tablet you sell along with it?
No, I'd say it's pretty much plug and play with iPhones, every tablet, every iPhone, whatever the operating system is, we operate with all of the common operating systems on all of the mobile devices and on the laptops and desktop computers as well. So yeah.
Nice, very easy to integrate. Awesome.
Yeah, very, very, yeah, it's just out of the box. It's just the way it operates. I want to back up a minute and make sure that I clarify something in case people misunderstood me. I talked earlier about how we got started in the Indian subcontinent and parts of Asia and Europe. But we have a dominant presence also in the United States. I want to make sure that people understand that. Um, our corporate headquarters is actually in Seattle, Washington. So
Okay,
yeah.
very cool.
Mhm.
How long have you been with the company?
2.5 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Were you before that? Were you in the field of some kind?
I have been in field service for literally 50 years.
Okay,
I, I spent my first 20 years actually managing field service operations, so managing technicians, parts rooms, depot repair shops, etc. I've spent the last 30 years either working in field service software, very similar to Zuper, or as a field service analyst for a couple of the analyst firms.
and what field was that you were managing technicians and parts rooms?
Yeah, good question. I went to work for IBM Field Engineering Division Computers when I was 19 years old, and I was going to school. I went to work for them as a night dispatcher and a parts room clerk, and then I moved up to regional headquarters in Seattle, where I stayed for many years, and I worked in that headquarters as a kind of a financial planner and manpower planning person. I managed a big parts distribution center in the Seattle area. And then I moved back to Colorado, which is where I'm from, and I went to work for another computer manufacturer, and I managed all the field service force domestically and internationally.
Oh wow. Okay. Very cool. Yeah, the I don't know if it was their biggest plant. I think it was their biggest plant on the East Coast, but actually in Poughkeepsie, New York,
I was going to say Poughkeepsie, I bet.
there you go. My high school was around the corner from there. I
Yeah,
lived 15
yeah.
minutes on the other side of the river, but we would pass the giant IBM headquarters off of Route 9 there regularly. My scoutmaster worked there, when I was a kid.
Oh,
Uh,
sure. Big,
yeah.
huge employer, IBM. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, massive. Now it's Lenovo, right? Didn't
Well,
Lenovo
they
buy
sold
them
off
or
they had the Lenovo laptops, but they sold that off to
okay.
Lenovo, the company, right?
Right, okay, gotcha. Yeah,
Separate from IBM, right?
I'm an Apple guy now, so I've stopped kind of tracking it.
Well, you might be interested to know that I've had an Apple since 1984.
Wow, okay. Back before they were cool.
They were cool then, but they were brand new. The little box. It was very neat. I got one. I got one. Yeah, yeah. I bought the very first Apple Macintosh version, and I've
Wow, okay.
had Apples ever since.
Have
Right.
you watched any or all of the Apple movies, motion pictures, whatever you want to call them, that like document Steve Jobs at various different times in his life?
I think
I find
I
them all very
one.
interesting.
I read the book. That was it. Isaac Jacobson. Can't think of the author's name correctly. I read his books some years ago. Shortly after Steve Jobs passed.
Yeah, I figured it was like right after he died. There three movies came out like a year
Yeah.
later. There was Ashton Kutcher played him
Oh yeah, yeah,
basically during the release of the iPod, and then Michael Fassbender played him, and it was like the release of the first Mac, and then fast forward to the first iMac that had like the color clamshell,
oh
and
yeah,
then
sure,
fast
sure.
forward to the iPhone, and it's like following him as he gets older and goes from like nice jackets to like turtleneck and jeans.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then Justin Long and Josh Gad made this hilarious comedy parody movie where they're like making fun of him, like, you know, basically following him in the garage, like starting from the very
yeah,
beginning. And,
yeah,
I found them all equally entertaining. And
yeah.
that's very interesting. I don't know if I've ever spoken to somebody who had the first Mac. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I did. I did. Yeah, I'm talking to you now on a MacBook Air, and
Nice.
I have another MacBook Air over here to my right. Yeah.
Nice. I'm on a big iMac desktop, so yeah, I like their products. They're very nice. But anyway, so the I'd like to ask, do you get to play around with any of the competition? Because I'm sure just like you could hire 200 different general contractors to build you a deck, there you guys can't be the only SaaS system that a person like me could buy a license for. So, assuming that there are plenty, because I'm sure there are, do you get to bring them into your company and compare like, oh, this one's really terrible at payroll and we're awesome, and this one's really really good at tracking miles. We should figure out how to be better at that.
Well, we certainly have some competitive analysis capabilities and people that try to do competitive analysis. We don't actually bring the software in-house and play around with it. We learn things from obviously typical stuff that anybody would use. We learn things by, exploring their website. We learn things when we get new customers that have used some of our competitors in the past. We'll learn things from those customers about how the software worked. We learn things by reading reviews that customers place on the web about what they like about the competitor's software and what they don't. Um, but you're correct. There are a number of competitors, and some of them cater specifically to the trades, like to plumbing, HVAC, electricians, etc. But as I mentioned earlier, we have a number of companies that are HVAC uh, um, providers and a lot of companies that are plumbers. So we have a significant base of users in the sort of blue collar community, if you want to think of it, the trades community.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
how do you guys go about constantly innovating your software and making sure that it is keeping up with the demand of the changing workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we do that by I mean, it'll sound trite, but it's not. We do that by listening to our customers. We have customers that come to us that ask for specific features and functions or
Hmm.
new integrations. And so we'll look at the requests and we'll say, does that make sense for our product and for our customer and our prospect community at large? And if it does, then we will put those features into the software. So it becomes part of the standard software. Sometimes, of course, we have to prioritize it. Sometimes some things are more important than others. We have more customers asking for feature A than are asking for feature B. So we'll do feature A first. And in some cases, what a customer is asking for is a good idea for that customer, but not necessarily for every customer. So in that particular case, we may do a customization for a customer if they need it, badly. If it's important to them specifically, but not necessarily important to all other customers, then we may talk to them about doing a customization for their specific implementation.
And you have the ability to do said customization and be like, okay, we made this just for you, Jane Doe client, and it's going to be 10 extra bucks a month because nobody else needs it. And we made it for you. Here you go.
We do have the ability. Yeah, it's kind of a bit of an oversimplification, but certainly we have done customizations for customers that are unique to that customer. A lot of times it has to do with reports. So a customer will need a very, very unique report or a very specific report that's really relevant only to them. So
Mm.
we'll do a custom report for them. So that's kind of an example. The other thing to note about this Zuper software is that the users can do some level of customizations themselves.
Hmm.
So we have the ability for customers to define their own settings. We have an enormous number of settings that customers can play with that will make the software operate one way versus another. So they can use the settings to tweak the software to match their business requirements. Um, they can build their own workflows. They can build their own automatic notifications. So notifications, for example, like if you were using Zuper, which I hope you do someday, by the way, uh, you can have in a workflow automatically send a customer a notification that you're on your way when you're responding to a job at their house. And that can include your picture and an estimated arrival time, et cetera. You can have a notification that sends the invoice to them automatically with a link to pay the invoice once you're done with the work, as we've talked about before. So you can build those kind of notifications yourself without having to hire Zuper to do it. We teach you, of course, but it's pretty straightforward. If I can do it, you can do it.
That was actually going to be a question of mine was, do you provide some sort of teaching tutorial, which is great to know.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, obviously there's such a range to the answer of what I'm about to ask you because there's no one size fits all. But approximately, how long does it take for your software team to, go through the trials and errors and code and all that to implement the new requests from a client that is using and loving your software, but was like, hey, there's 5%, the report you mentioned, we're not getting this one report. We really need it, so after you've gotten that, from enough customers where you internally go, okay, this is worth it. Enough people are asking for it. We need to add this to the software. Like, what kind of time frame is that?
Well, you're exactly right. It depends on the complexity and it depends on a number of other things. But if the customer takes the software, and the software in and of itself by itself is pretty robust, it's very, very feature rich. If the customer takes the software as is, right, and doesn't need to make any specific unique configuration changes or very unique setting changes or updates, and they don't need any customizations, I've heard of customers that have gone live within 2 weeks.
Mm.
So And I heard of one, I think somebody told me 1 week. So that's like taking it straight out of the box with very, very little effort to make changes or updates. On the other hand, if you have many updates that you need to make, you have many, many people that are involved in the implementation. So you have the dispatchers, you have the managers, you have the parts room people, you have the service technicians, you have the billing people, you have the service contracts people, you have all of those people involved, then it becomes much more complex. And typically it will take, I would say, an average implementation for most of our customers is between 2 and 4 months, probably closer around the 3 month midpoint range. Um, Perhaps between 3 and 4 months, but between 2 and 4 months generally. If it's a very complex implementation, it can take maybe up to 6 months. So now that's for our software. I'm familiar with other software that is similar to ours that is sold primarily to very, very large companies with thousands of technicians. And I've seen those implementations take 1 to 2 years.
Okay. And
That's
what
not
does
that's not us, right?
gotcha.
That's us, right. But
And is
you
that
and I, yeah, it can the timing can really vary depending upon the complexity and the nature of the business that's implementing the software.
and what does the 2 to 4 months look like? Is it, on a Skype with Zuper for an hour a week and going through examples of, okay, well, I did this and I got an error message. What should I do? Or like, what does it actually look like? If I bought this tomorrow and I'm
Sure.
integrating it, what does that look like?
Sure. Well, there's a whole team of people within Zuper that are dedicated to implementing the software for customers. So typically, a customer would get an account manager to manage the implementation and work with the customer on the implementation. There will be periodic, usually a weekly or sometimes even more often than weekly, depending upon, again, the complexity and the number of people that are involved, where we teach the customers, we walk them through all of the settings so they understand the settings. We help them determine what the settings should be for their operations. We help them understand what the workflows and the notifications need to be for their operations. And then we instruct them and help them to build out those notifications and those workflows. And then we verify all of that. We do all of that testing with the customer's help, or we direct the customer in doing the testing so that they're using their own data, and they're using their own workflows to become very familiar with the software. The other step that we often do, probably almost always, is we bring over old data. So they may have, for example, already have a list of customers, like you probably have a list of customers. We will bring that list of customers into Zuper automatically. We'll import that data from wherever they currently have it, whether it's in a spreadsheet or it's in another system that they've been using for a while. We'll take that data and import it into Zuper for them. So they have all the data that they need to use Zuper. If they have historical information that they want to bring into Zuper, like say they've been using another software application for the last 4 years, but they want to bring over all the history or 2 years worth of history, we'll bring all of that history over for them. So we do a lot of the technical work as far as getting the data into the system and the historical data into the system, et cetera. And then we teach them and work with them on how to set up the settings, create the workflows, how to create notifications, how to set up their own custom fields if they need to have custom fields. The idea is to help them become successful as soon as possible, but also in the process to teach them how to do things themselves so that they don't have to depend on us going forward.
I will assume though that there is somebody if you needed help
Oh,
going
of
forward.
course.
Of course. Okay.
There's 24-hour support available 7 days a week. Yep.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, I obviously we didn't set up this Zoom for you to try to sell me, but it sure seems like something that everybody should be thinking about because, it just like my marketing, it can be difficult to justify the expense sometimes, especially as a smaller business.
Sure.
But I think if you have any aspirations in your company being around for a really long time or any aspirations
And
for it to
growing,
grow,
not
yeah,
just being around, but growing.
absolutely. Yeah. And growing or scaling or both, then you've got to think about your systems. They're vital. And the better they are, the more ironclad they are, and the more easier they are to use, it's just going to help you in the long run. I mean,
Yeah.
if I needed to hire an office person and I had to spend a week telling them all my stupid stuff versus 2 hours training them on how to use a Zuper system, that saves me a lot of time and money right there. So it's
Or
just, the integration. I love how you guys thought about using every other uh complementary system rather than just making something in-house, which could take a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of R&D on your end. You're like, well, wait a minute, these financial institutions are doing it correctly. Let's just integrate them. We don't need to
exactly.
make our own.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
No, I think it's really essential that companies like you, companies that are growing, really have to take a serious look at what is being called digitization, right, of their business, um, because you can't continue to do things manual or even semi-manually and expect to achieve the greatest efficiencies and to achieve the kind of growth that you strive for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think especially a small business
Yeah.
growth is not the first thing on the brain. In fact, sometimes it's the last thing on the brain. A lot of times you're like, well, I need to survive the next month,
Yeah.
It's
I get that.
and so, there's a long-term thinking that a lot of small businesses put to the side because
Mhm.
it's not a priority. And trust me, I get it. I've been there literally, and it can be daunting to even justify any extra cost. But when you start zooming out a little bit and looking at the long-term, larger scale of things, it's definitely something that should be considered by all small business owners. And it's really, really nice to hear that even though you can handle, hundreds, thousands of employees, whatever it may be, um, the fact that you're working with small businesses, it sounds like the majority of the tradesmen that you guys are working with are HVAC techs. And in my head, that's who needs this the most because there's that many parts and that many vans and that many crews. I'm thinking of my HVAC crew right now. I mean, they've got 6 service vans, each with 1 to 2 guys. They have 6 install vans doing the new construction installs. They have 5 office people.
Mhm.
It's you got to track all of it, and their systems are incredible. They do a service for me. I get an emailed invoice 3 seconds later with a click here, pay now button, and I've never thought anything of it. It's just easy.
Yeah.
So to be them on the other side, sending that to customers would just make your professionalism look that much better, and it'll make you look professional.
Yeah. No, that's true. Makes you look like you know what you're doing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it presents you with a competitive advantage. I mean, if your competitors have a system that are allowing them to be efficient and to appear professional and to be speedy in the delivery of their invoices and speedy in the delivery of their service, that's a competitive advantage for them against those people that don't have it. There's just no question about it.
yeah, it's
So
true. It's
you
true.
got to think about it from that perspective as well. And I'm glad you mentioned small business because that is where we started. That's where the majority of our customers are today. And we continue to be very successful in serving the small to mid-sized business community. It's
That's
our
very good to know.
it's our bread and butter right now. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. And how often would you say, forgive me if you don't know this, but I'm just out of curiosity, how often would you say are you getting a current customer coming back and going, we really wish that this feature existed, and then begin to maybe research how to create that feature?
I don't know that I can put a time frame on it. I think it's pretty much constant. I mean, I'm not trying to say it's every day, but we come out with new releases, new features in the software, probably several times a year,
Hmm.
4 to 6 times a year at least. And most of those features are there as a result of some customer asking for it. So I think we get several new customers every month. Uh, and every month, probably one or more of those new customers say, gee, it'd be nice if we also had this, right? And so we look at that and put it into the next release.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty fluid process where we get feedback, we evaluate it, we put it in the, we build it, we test it, we put it in the software. Sometimes we'll make it beta, if you want to think of it that way. For some customers, let a couple of customers try it out first before we make it generally available. But it's pretty much of a constant flow of information from our customers that helps us improve the product.
I think that's incredible. There's plenty of people who think that whatever they made doesn't need improvement. And the fact that you guys are like, not only can it be improved, but we're trying to do it daily and we're listening to the customers who are using the product. I mean, that it sounds like such a duh as we say it back and forth to each other as we're both in the customer service world, but it really is, people aren't doing it, which makes the people who are doing it that much better.
Well,
Um,
I'll give you a real life example, and it's a pretty big one, really. We have heard from our customers in the HVAC industry and construction industry you know, for the past many months, maybe a couple years, I think a couple years at least, that they'd like to see us expand our capabilities as far as managing jobs is concerned, to come up with a full-blown project management, construction project management application. So we did.
hmm,
And we just recently, within the past month, announced our new project management module, which basically allows people like HVAC companies to not only manage individual jobs, individual installation and repair jobs and things like that, but to manage longer term projects as well. So say you're an HVAC company and you've been selected by a builder to put in all the HVAC systems in a new housing community. That's not a one-day job, that's a long-term project, right? So now we have the ability with our project capabilities to manage those types of activities as well. And that came specifically from requests that we got from our customers. And then we have a lot more, obviously much smaller features and things that we've added as well. But that's just an example of something major that came about as a result of our customers saying, gee, we'd like to have this.
I mean, you're speaking my language. Most of my projects are longer term and involve, I'm the licensed GC and I'm the project manager. So, I get it. And I'm basically doing it via a notepad and a text message thread.
Yeah.
And, it works for me because in the realm of construction, I'm small potatoes residential. But, if I maybe this software is exactly what I need to keep that long-term project management hat easier to
Yeah.
wear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Um, so if you are not the salesperson that you want to send over to me later, and you're not developing the software on with a team of super nerds that know how to code, what is your role in the company?
my role is doing exactly what I'm doing right now. I mean, I don't do podcasts all day long, of course, but my role is to promote the company and make the company as well known as possible. So I do a lot of podcasts. I do webinars. We I do presentations. I We're actually writing a book.
Hmm,
So just anything and everything I can do to promote the company and make the company better known.
gotcha. Very cool. And I guess really I'd like to kind of move to my I guess our like final topic would be what would set Zuber apart from, I'm sure, the dozens, if not hundreds of competitors that have a software that they would like to sell to somebody like me who is, I'm a general contractor, I'm in the residential world, and I don't have a software. So I'm sure that there are, dozens of them. And what sets Zuber apart from the competitors?
I think there's a couple things that set Zuper apart. One of them is we've talked about it a little bit, and that is the ability of the customers to tailor or tweak the application to their specific needs. It's very, very configurable. We talked a little bit about settings and how many settings there are and the ways the settings can be altered or changed to match a customer's business flow. We've talked about the ability for customers to define their own notifications. That's notifications to customers, notifications to internal people as well, to define their own workflow so that if if step A happens, then automatically step B comes next. But if step A doesn't happen, step B doesn't have to happen either. Those kinds of workflows can be defined, for example, in jobs. We have the ability to define specific checklists, inspection lists for every type of job, for every type of piece of equipment. So if going back to the water heater example, if I'm a plumber and I need to replace an anode rod and I need to drain the hot water heater and do a couple of other things, the user can define very specific steps for the technician to do to make sure the technician does it correctly and to make sure the technician does it in the right order.
Mhm.
So that's a very valuable tool especially for junior technicians that are still maybe learning a little bit and they haven't quite reached journeyman status. So the ability to guide the technicians through diagnostic and repair steps is really important. And then we just touched on the fact that customers can add their own custom fields. If there's something very unique that they need to track that no other customer that's using Zuper needs to track, they can build out their own custom field, and it's very easily done. You don't have to be a programmer at all. I can do it, and I'm not a programmer. So those kinds of things, it makes the software very, very configurable. The other thing that I would say that I like to talk a lot about, you asked me about implementation timeframes, and I gave you some estimates. Typically, our implementation timeframes are shorter and faster than many, if not most of our competitors, which makes it less expensive for the customer, of course. So I always say that the total cost of ownership, that is the cost of the license and the cost of the implementation of the Zuper software, is typically often, and I'd say most often, less than it's going to be with a competitor. And our implementation timeframes are going to be generally faster than it will be with a competitor.
So to detail that, you break down the cost from a customer perspective. There's the one time or maybe it's yearly licensing fee.
It's usually yearly. Yeah,
Okay.
it's based on a monthly rate, but it's billed annually. Yes,
Okay, so there's an annual licensing fee, and that's basically, I do the same thing to use Microsoft
it's a
Word or whatever.
subscription.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's a subscription. And then there's a cost, and we don't have to get into the specifics. Obviously, people can reach out to Zuper if they want to hire you guys directly. But then there's the implementation of the software is not a set fee because it could take longer or shorter.
That's right.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
That's right. And I would tell you, in my experience, we have in my experience in the time that I've been here, we have been very flexible with our implementation fees. So we have not wanted to drive a potential customer away just based upon having what they might perceive as a higher implementation fee. So we're very conscious of trying to keep the cost of implementation down as much as possible to suit the customer's needs.
Right. And I would assume, but could please correct me if I'm wrong, that your implementation time and therefore cost will be lower the earlier you start the implementation, i.e., the smaller your company is.
Exactly.
Right. So if you
That's right.
wait,
So
if
let's
you
say you
wait till you
start
got a couple hundred customer or a couple hundred employees, it's going to take a lot longer to implement everything.
Well, probably because then you've got to train a couple hundred people, right? Now you start out with 5 people, get them trained really well, and then next 6 months you hire 4 more people. Those 5 people can train the 4 people.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So you're done with your implementation fees once your implementation is completed and your training is completed, and then you do it yourself. By the time the implementation is done with the help of Zuper, ideally the customers are well trained on everything and they know how to do the settings. They know how to develop their own custom fields. They know how to develop their own workflows and notification flows. And occasionally they might need some help, but that's why the support is there. It's there 24/7.
And that
So
support, I assume, is not sending a bill for a phone call.
no,
No,
it's
that's
not.
that's part of the licensing is you get that support for a one-off quick question. And then if you
Right.
need
You
if
know,
you
unless
need
you're asking,
somebody,
yeah, unless you're asking for something unique now, say, okay, I've been using the software for 6 months, and now all of a sudden I think I need a brand new report. I think I've discovered that I need a new report, and I don't have the expertise to develop it myself, which many customers do, right? Then they might call up and say, "Can I get your support in building a report?" And then we would give them a quote to build a report.
okay, gotcha. So you really have some flexibility based
Oh, of
on
course.
customer needs, and
Absolutely.
that might be another selling point of y'all's software and company is just you're developing software basically to streamline customer service, and y'all's
Yep.
customer service is in line with your values.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think to come back to the benefits that you were asking me about, the one thing that I kind of glossed over is that, and this is at a really high level, the competitive one of the competitive advantages, significant competitive advantages, is that the software is malleable, it's tailorable, it can be tweaked to match your specific business flow. We don't ask you to match your business flow to the software. We
Hmm.
provide you software that allows you to match the software to your business flow, right? So it's very flexible in that regard.
Right. And then it sounds like as anybody's business changes, there's just plenty of things to unlock or change. You
You got
get
it.
everything and you don't necessarily have to use all the features, but they're there as your business changes and you need more features. They've been there the whole time. It's just a matter of maybe getting some additional training when the time is needed.
Yeah, very good point.
Yeah.
Exactly
That's
right.
awesome. So you can continue not only to use the system but grow and use Zuper to help you grow through every stage. Is there a point where a company is too large to
No,
use Zuper?
no.
No. Awesome. Wow. So nothing too small, nothing too large, and you can tailor it as your company changes.
Have you ever heard of IKEA?
Big fan.
They use Zuper
Okay, well, that was enough for me.
globally, globally, big
And
company.
their entire company is a showroom and a giant parts warehouse. So they need to track that better than arguably better than
What
most.
they use Zuper for in many parts of the world is so in Europe, for example, it's not customary for people to go to IKEA and buy something and take it home and put it together like we do here in the States. People would rather buy it, take it home, and have a technician come in and put it together for them.
Okay.
So that's what IKEA uses us for in many, many countries. They don't use us in the United States for that because in the United States, we don't do it that way, right? You buy it, you take it home, put it together yourself. But in many other countries around the world, they hire people from IKEA to come in and put their stuff together. So they're kind of field technicians, if you will, that are assembling
Hmm.
furniture.
Out of curiosity, just because I'm a huge fan of IKEA, do you know, are those like somebody like me that's a contractor or are they IKEA employees?
I don't, to tell you the truth, I don't know for sure, but I believe, if you'll allow me to use the word believe, I think they're IKEA employees,
Huh,
but they
that's
could be
interesting.
it could be a mixture of both too.
That's very interesting. I've actually been hired to assemble IKEA stuff,
Yeah.
mostly for elderly people who will order it online. It'll show up from UPS or whatever, and they're like, "Yeah, I need this bookcase assembled." And for somebody like me, I mean, I've been doing IKEA stuff since before I was ever going to be in construction, so that stuff just works with my brain. So it's
There's been a
fun
lot
and
of times that
interesting.
I wished I could have called an IKEA somebody put something together.
I will
Unfortunately, our
say
neighbors. Yeah.
their wardrobes are not the easiest to put together, but I've done a few now at this point. So, um, well, this is fantastic, Michael. I really thank you for coming on. I
Well,
think
thanks for
that
having me.
you're more than welcome. I think that Zuper is an incredible product. I would definitely love to learn about it more in a off-air situation.
Yeah, sure.
Um, and I
We
think
take
that
things back. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. We should set that up for sure. And I think that you know, we're on this podcast, we're trying to reach homeowners. We're trying to educate them. But just because this one isn't specifically about construction, I'm sure there's plenty of homeowners who are small business owners who, are on the fence about this kind of system. And I hope after hearing this that they definitely move to the correct side of the fence, because it's just only a matter of time before you scale enough and get it done early, and it's easier.
Great.
No.
Well, it's been my pleasure to be on here. It's been fun, actually. So thank you for allowing me to come on and speak with you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just lastly, for those who are listening and possibly watching, Zuper, just zuper.com, or a phone number, what's the easiest way for people to reach out?
Yeah, it's Zuper, Zuper.co. It's not .com.
Okay, .co. Gotcha.
And my email, if people want to email me for anything, is very simple. It's Michael, Michael, at Zuper.co.
There you go.
Yep,
Awesome.
very, very.
Very easy. And as always, thanks for listening to the Orange Hammer podcast. You can reach out all the social medias, CRS Contracting's on the socials as well. Corb at WSDG.com and 845-489-6057. If you want to come on the show, talk about something on the show, or need work, all the above, that's where you could reach me. And Michael, just thanks again. I really appreciate your time.
No problem. I enjoyed it. Thanks so much, and have a great weekend coming up.
Awesome. You too.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.